people in New York City who like try to scam you out of $25.
We went to a psychic.
I am clairvoyant. I had a palm reading done.
Yes.
And she said I was clairvoyant.
Well, there you go.
I got a tarot card reading done. It just told me to stay away from a girl with an L in her name. So
Well, not a girl, but
I've been telling him that for months.
he said. Hello and welcome. I'm Dennis Semsey.
And I'm Sam Hornberger.
On this episode, we sat down and talked to a 26-year-old witch from Massachusetts. You are listening to the No Faith in Humanity podcast, the podcast about...
I usually do spells with nobody else but me.
Hello everyone and welcome. Do we have a treat for you today? On this episode we have just an incredibly interesting guy on. He manages rock bands for a living, some pretty well-known rock bands. Shinedown, Highly Suspect, Theory of a Dead Man, just to name a few. And so he has like a ton of stories just from that avenue of his life alone. Not to mention his very unique insight on spirituality. And you're gonna hear, like, while we have this interview, that we just have a blast with him. We're laughing, we're having a great time. We get to the core of things, of course, but we have a lot of fun doing it. He's just such a good friend, such an incredible guy, a fantastic human, and we're just like so pleased. And we're just so excited to share this with you. So just a heads up, this episode does contain explicit language. So if you have little ears around, or if you're at work, it may be best for you to hold off and listen to this a little bit later on when you have some more private time. Also, this episode is broken up into 3 sections. Each section contains a piece of the interview, followed by a further discussion Sam and I had together about the topics that were brought up in that section of interview. And you'll be able to tell when we're transitioning from interview to further discussion or further discussion to interview, because there'll be small musical interludes separating them. Alright, I hope you enjoy. I know we did.
Okay, so we'll be picking up the interview with Liam, introducing some of the basic beliefs of Wicca, because, like us, you might be unfamiliar.
You know, people in Wicca believe that, you know, it's Mother Earth. Like, it's all based on treating this world right, you know, nature and the environment and everything. And most people wouldn't believe that. You know, they kind of look at Wicca and they're like, yeah, I'm casting spells and all that shit, you know. But it's really, at the base of it, it's about, you know, being on Earth and, you know, being one with the Earth. And that's a lot that has to do with meditation. And it's the same thing in Buddhism.
What are the forces at play in the universe in your Wiccan worldview?
Okay.
Are there multiple spirits and these are affecting change on our plane? Are they on our plane or are they on a separate plane?
So,
and do we communicate between planes, I guess?
Good question. So basically, the basic, and I think this is what you asked before, and then I went off on a tangent like I usually do, but there are 2 deities, or gods, so to speak. There's the horned god, and then there's the horned goddess. And they have, it's like, usually like most Wiccans have, when you cast spells, you have a figure in between your 2 main candles, like your altar candles, and that figure is either the horned god or the horned goddess. And these are the 2, it's like Mother Earth, kind of, like it's like the 2, like, it's polytheistic, like the 2 deities that like oversee the earth, you know. One of them is
did
physical.
Did they also create the Earth?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
You know, I haven't delved that far into it, to be truth be told, but I just know that these 2 are the 2 deities that most people pray to, and it's you know, and then there's another one above it there's like an overarching God, like what God would be. You know, like there's an overarching God called the Prime Mover. The Prime Mover is most likely the person who created the earth and created things. You know, but the Prime Mover is like very agnostic because no one really knows what the hell it is. You know, the Prime Mover is just, it's not so much a person, but it's just a force, you know.
Yeah.
And it's the Prime Mover of the universe.
Like the unmoved mover.
Yes,
basically.
exactly. Yes.
In philosophy, if you go back, something must have moved something at one point. What was the thing that moved the first thing?
Yes, the Prime Mover, which is that's exactly what it is. And it's like, you know, that's what that is. And then there's the Horn God and the Horn Goddess. And so that's pretty much the gist of it on that basic top level.
So then you're saying that when you set up an altar, you put either one in.
When you set up an altar,
so it's like
it's and it depends. It doesn't matter who you choose.
Oh, it doesn't. Okay,
because,
that's what my question was.
Some dudes are like Horn Goddess, you know, and some dudes are like Horn God. You know, is the figure. It doesn't really matter, and the figure doesn't have to be either of those. It could be a Greek god. It could be a Roman god. You know, it could be anyone else. Like I know somebody who has Janus, the two heads facing opposite directions. Like that's their figure. You know. Just you have to have a figure that has like a, you know, like a god of something or like a meaning to you personally. That's why it's so hard to explain all of this to somebody because it's just like it's so loose. But me personally, I have the Horn God as mine, and you set it up in between. Like when you cast a spell, you have to set up candles and you have to have an altar. And usually you have 2 white candles that are your 2 altar candles, and then in the middle you have the figure, and then in front of the figure you have the censer. The censer is that little wooden platform you use to burn incense on. That could have a little design on it or whatever. It doesn't matter what it is. And then in front of that is where you set up your candles and start lighting the candles according to whatever the spell is. So yeah.
No, what I really like about Wicca that I'm like hearing, I really like that it's on a personal level. I really dislike the your spiritual journey needing to be shared, or you have to be in some community in order to perform it or in order to advance in it or whatever.
Yeah, well,
I like that.
Here we go. We're getting into a whole nother thing. There are 2 different types of witches, male or female. People who practice with other people and people who don't. People who practice with other people are in a thing called, yes, it's been fictionalized, but it's true, in a coven.
Yeah.
A coven is basically a gathering of witches who sit in a giant fucking circle. Can I say that? Yeah. Who sit in a giant fucking circle, and you know they're usually sky-clad. And you can look this up too.
Sky-clad?
Take a guess at what sky-clad means.
They're naked.
Yes, in their birthday suits. It's not supposed to be sexual. It's supposed to be like, you know, you're
just nakedness.
Yeah, it's supposed to be like
I guess like
nakedness in the fullest
like
sense
how
of the
you
word.
were born. That's like how you came out of the womb. That's how you're gonna pray. You know, and that's like most. I would go as far as saying that most witches, you know, in covens or solitaire. Solitaire is what you're called if you do it by yourself, which is what I am.
Yeah.
I'm a solitaire witch.
Which I would be too.
Yeah, because like, you know, like, truth be told, most people are not okay with being naked in front of other people. You know, like, I have no problem with it, but it's like, you know, I mean...
I'm a never nude.
Like, yeah, oh yeah?
Just like, these are the George Soros to the shower.
Yeah. I mean, but like, truth be told, most people don't like being naked in front of people, and, you know, that's why they're solitaire witches, so they can do it by themselves naked. And some people don't even do it by themselves naked. Some people just sit there in their regular clothes and do it, you know, and that's fine too. And the beauty about Wicca is that it doesn't matter how you do it.
Yeah, that's great.
You know, as long as you're doing the spells and like the, you know, tarot card readings and all of the instruments correctly, you know.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, those are the 2 kinds. You could be in a coven or you could do it.
Okay. And how are you exposed to it? How do you like?
Well, because
How did this first come up for you? Because you told me you dabbled in Christianity and you thought that no.
Well, like basically, I
wafers.
just like when growing up, like, you know, it's like, I don't know, you know, and I could be totally wrong, but I feel like Christianity has become such like a norm like a normal religion. Like people are just like,
It's
oh yeah,
mainstream.
I want my kids to be Catholic, you
course,
know,
yeah.
and like everyone's like, yeah, totally, let's do that because a lot of people do that. Why don't we do that?
There's some great privilege that comes with that.
And that's great, yeah. But the thing is, I
Absolutely.
grew up, went to St. Bernard's Church in Newton, Massachusetts.
Shout out.
Went to shout out. Even though it sucks, but I went to Sunday school. Did the whole thing. Like I've read, like Genesis, Exodus, like Deuteronomy, like all the shit. Like I've read the Bible. Like I've read everything. And it's like. I thought the Bible was great. Like I was, totally into it. And I'm not gonna like step on anyone else's beliefs. But,
Yeah.
like, it just wasn't for me. Like I got communion when I was 7, and then after that, like my parents stopped really going to church separately, and I just, it just kind of. I felt like I didn't. I think the main thing for me was like I felt like I was being forced to go to church.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I felt like I was forced to be believing in this religion, and I was like, you know what, like. I don't want to go to church every Sunday. Like
Yeah.
I don't want to get up and go out and like sit in a pew and like
Did you do
pretend like I
confession
know how
and
to
stuff?
say the Nicene Creed. Like I'm not gonna sit there and do that. And it's just it seemed like it was just too involved for me, and it like so I needed to like in my teen years and into college, like I decided that I would research as many religions as I possibly could.
That's awesome.
And see which one fits the best for me, and it just so happened to be Wicca, and I
be
stumbled
Wicca,
upon that a couple of years ago, and
And was it just like a light? You were just like, yes. You were just like right when you're like this.
well,
is
I
for-
tried it. Like the thing
Yeah.
is, like I tried Buddhism. My dad's a Buddhist.
Yeah.
Which not many people know. He's very like me. He's very undercover about it. Like he believes in all that type of stuff. And I tried that too. And I was just like, okay, I connected with it, but I was like, not in the way that I connected with Wicca. Like when I first started, meditating, because meditation is a huge part of Wicca. And when I started reading about it was really what got me excited. I was like, oh, this is cool. I was like, but meditating for the first time, and casting a circle and doing my first like candle burning spells and burning sage and like dressing candles, like, I had this, it's just what worked for me, and like the tarot cards are really kind of what kicked it off for me, because I bought my tarot deck and I started doing readings for myself, and this is where I start to sound a little bit crazy, even though I just talked about dressing candles, but I did a reading for myself, and it turned out to be really eerily true, and so I kept at it, and it just evolved from there. So now I'm here, and it's funny because I've only I don't really have any friends that are witches at all. Like I have like one, and I'm not really. It's like one of my girlfriend's friends. Like I'm not. I don't have like a group of like witch buddies that like the Lost Boys. Like we go out and like drive around in a fucking Impala and like I don't have that.
like a hearse or something.
Yeah,
I feel like
we're like like we have like a giant pentacle on the front of our hood, like, and we're like, yeah, we're rolling through town because we're the witches. Like, no, like I don't have
strapped
like
to the roof.
brooms up on the roof, like, fire coming. Like I don't have that. I don't have any witch friends really. And it's like, actually most of the people who, when I say I'm a witch, they just kind of laugh, which is probably the only response that anyone will ever give me for the next like 3 to 4 years, because I feel like in a few years it'll get like it's a growing religion. Christianity and Judaism and Islam, like those are the biggest religions right now. Those are already religions that are just like booming. And like if you say, oh, I'm Muslim, like these days somebody would probably be like, whoa,
Well, down here,
that I
right,
just pointed my hands like that. But like, and if you're a Christian, people are like, oh, or you Jewish? Oh, yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Like, but these days you don't really see anybody who's like, yeah, I'm a witch, and they're like, the reaction's usually not, oh, totally. The
Yeah, I feel
reaction's
like if you
usually
said
like, oh, really? Where's your cauldron, bro? And I'm like, fuck you. That's usually my response. But it's like, so I mean, it's just that's
Maybe
also
if you just said
the reason.
Wiccan instead of like I'm a Wiccan instead of a
You
witch.
could say that,
witches,
but
like,
you
maybe
still get the
witches,
same.
like,
You'd be
really?
surprised. You still
Yeah.
get the same reaction where people kind of smirk with the corner of their mouth, and they're
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, that's funny," and you're like, "It's not."
Yeah.
And you're like, "It's not."
So yeah, I mean, going in order of this section, kind of just talking about what stood out to me, and we kind of talked about this a little bit before when we listened to it, was the idea of, okay, first of all, the casting of spells, which like at first sounds really bizarre, but it's kind of fictionalized. I mean, you think of Harry Potter, you immediately go to these ridiculous kind of examples, like something in Narnia or something fantastical. But I mean, if you think about it, a spell is essentially a prayer, right? I mean, you're essentially praying to a certain deity to affect something going on in the world. I mean, that's essentially what prayer is.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're in the same category of things. I think in order to have a proper conversation, they need to be distinguished as separate and independent. But I think they're both things that humans do, or humans claim to be able to use to affect change in the physical world through the spiritual world.
Can you explain, like, just a little bit, like, how you differentiate them, or how you think they should be differentiated when you're talking about it?
In Scripture, prayers can be silent or spoken, and it's really just a verbal kind of request or desire to God, any kind of communication of that sort. Whereas spells, it's not one spell that can do many things. Each spell has its own function, and that function will never change for that spell. So that's like, to prayer is this one thing that can change into anything, because it's completely controlled by free will and the words you choose to use and say. And spells are kind of like that, in that there are so many different ones that you do have a vocabulary to use within it, but you need to use each specific one for its intended purpose, I guess, where there's no, at least in the Christian faith, you don't have specific prayers for specific verses. There's no real, like, this is the salvation prayer. I believe Islam does have something like that. I believe one of the first passages within the Quran is a prayer that you recite, or an oath or something, and then that's when you are officially Muslim, after you've made that oath or said that prayer.
And Muslims, they do have some ritualistic nature to their prayers as well. I mean, you have to face a certain way, you have to bow a certain amount of time. I'm not sure. I've witnessed.
And so that's one thing that these two, both spells and prayers, kind of hold in common, is that there are.
It's in there with Catholicism. Certain people lighting certain candles and everything.
Yeah. So there are accoutrements to the ritual. It is a ritual. Yeah. It's a series of steps and actions that you perform to conduct something, or while conducting something. And I think, with prayer, it's a while activity.
It's a what activity?
It's a while. It's an ongoing activity. WHILE.
Yeah, gotcha.
Whereas with spells, it's a before. It's something that you do to establish. It's kind of like, I guess, it's preparatory work, I see. Whereas with prayer, I think it's more an ongoing. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I don't know. And I feel like with prayer, and we talked about this a little bit before too, is like with prayer, I think, like, that there's Bible passages, like, if you have faith of a mustard seed, you can tell the mountain to move and it will move out of the way. Or, there's passages like that. So I feel like when you pray, there's like you have to be in the right mindset and the right heart state. And I don't know, I guess if you're performing the spell and you're like dressing the candles and you're putting the rocks around, I guess you're in an actual right heart and mindset when casting, when doing these things. I feel like that preps you for doing, I mean, you're taking
and
these
I think that's the point
and
of
you're
ritual.
Naked too, which is like another thing that's like very extremely vulnerable, that to be naked in front of
being skyclad.
Yeah.
With a coven of people there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, or solitary. I mean, I've never prayed naked. Have you ever prayed naked? You want to answer that on? We can skip that question. I mean, there probably. I shouldn't say I've never prayed. I prayed in the shower and everything, so I've been naked. But it hasn't been like something where it's like I'm gonna intentionally strip down to pray.
Being skyclad or being naked as a way to prep yourself for spiritual activity makes sense to me, because being naked, when I think about it, is something that's very rare. It's if you're going to take a shower or if you're going to bed. When you wake up in the morning, being naked isn't an activity or isn't a state that you put yourself into. You simply wake up as naked and you go about clothing yourself. The only time when you're actually unclothing your body, which I think is really what makes skyclad what it is, the process of taking off, and what that means. I think that's what, kind of puts you into the state where you can reach out and maybe also receive a little bit more easily as far as sensing some kind of vibe goes.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that.
I know with prayer, I haven't stripped down for it, but there have been times when I've needed to sit for like 45 minutes with my eyes closed and my hands clasped like I was trying to pray, but just 45 minutes of silence just to, I guess, remove whatever, encumberments I had in my mind or on my spiritual self.
Yeah, you're removing mental clothes.
Yeah.
Kind of stripping yourself down mentally, yeah. I think it's like just doing it physically just reinforces that. Maybe it's like, maybe it would be a good practice to like be like, hey, when I take off my clothes, I am also taking off like what burdens I have to get into this place with my God or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. That seems like a healthy practice, talking about it now, like it seems like the kind of thing that would make sense. Like, like you should actually reasonably approach a person, and when you find out that they don't pray skyclad, when they pray to whatever God they're praying to.
Towards the end, when he was just kind of talking about how he got into Wiccan, becoming a Wiccan or becoming a witch. When he was talking about that and how he kind of said that, when he did say that, he was forced to go to church and everything. I don't know. I feel like I kind of related with him on that, because I was definitely forced to go to church. There was no excuse to not going to church or
Same
a youth
here.
group or something. Yeah, it was just like you always had to go, and even to this day, like when I go to visit my family and stuff, and I love my parents to death, but like even when I go to visit them, if I didn't want to go to church on Sunday, I would be totally guilt tripped into going to church. It's still
Denny, come.
Yeah.
You haven't been there in so long.
Yeah.
Have you even come yet?
Come on, you barely come up and see us. You could do this one. It's just like total guilt trip. But so I relate with that, and maybe I don't know. Maybe I was dwelling on that after listening to that, and how like I don't know. Maybe that's what made it. Made me have some aversion to Christianity, some fight. Although I know that like kids will combat with their parents about doing anything that they want them to do, so I don't think it's uncommon for a kid not to want to go to church. But I don't know, maybe feeling like kind of feeling that feeling of pressure, feeling like I was forced to go and everything and unable to really like formulate my own thoughts, gave me like a certain aversion or like certain like deadened me towards Christianity a little bit in a way. I don't know. I was kind of thinking about that, and then when he was talking about how he got into Wicca, it's like, hey, I tried it. I cast a spell, and I was like, holy crap, this worked. Like, this is real. I don't know. I feel like I'm in. Not that I'm going to be trying spells or anything, but like I feel like I want that kind of moment. That kind of like, wow, this is real, and I feel like. I didn't get that from Christianity. I never really got that like, whoa, this is real. Like this is powerful stuff. Like let me step back for a second, which is like sounded like what happened with him, and like I don't know. I just feel like maybe because Christianity, I'm deadened towards it, and because it was kind of forced on me. I already have this kind of it's just kind of like stale to me. Like there's nothing like vibrant about it. And I don't know if it's because I was in it for so long, or maybe because I grew up in it, and also maybe partially because it was definitely like forced upon me. Like I didn't really have much of a choice, and I understand that parents, you're meant to raise your kids in a certain way, and oddly enough, I probably want my kids to go to church. The importance of making them do stuff and bringing them to church, because Christianity teaches a lot of great things. It gave me a great community. I made a lot of friends from it. It gave me like healthy interactions with people. There's a lot of positive in it.
It is a very hard thing to break into. It's not, I know it was for me, just because you sort of feel a certain way when you're trying to find your set of beliefs. You don't know where you are, you don't know what you're doing, and go for broke is a popular phrase in the English language, where it means you'll do anything to win. And I don't necessarily want to win, but the thing that I want to win is finding my center and finding my spirituality and what I believe in. And I think I found it. Now I just need to fine-tune it.
What was it like, uncomfortable at first to you? It was like, yeah, you're right. There's a stigma. It seems a little...
I mean, in the beginning, I felt a little... you feel a little... Because it's different. It's not popular. It's not a thing, it's not considered something like, oh, yeah, you're casting spells? Yeah, I cast spells too, bro. It's not like a thing where you're doing it and you're like, everybody does this,
Yeah.
But that's kind of what drew me toward it. I was like, this is a different thing, and I was like, I have to learn it myself, and, I take it very seriously, and, take my spirituality very seriously, and it kind of evolved into this thing that, I'm all about, and I do it all the time now, and I love it. And generally, people are accepting of it when I tell people that I'm Wiccan, or any of those things. And it's, for me, it's about why I do this is because I needed a belief system, and I needed it's fulfilling, and there's
you feel fulfilled by
there's really no way to explain how something fulfills you. Like it's not like it's sort of like a relationship, like I have a relationship with Wicca, like most Christians have a relationship with God, and it's basically just kind of like, taking control of your willpower and, taking control of your spirituality. And, I have a very stressful job. Like I said in the beginning of this podcast, it's like, meditation is probably the most basic form of why I do this. Like meditating is so important to me, and I do it. I try to do it as much as I can. There's certain times where I can't, where I'm like flying in a plane or something. It's like possible to meditate where you're flying in a fucking plane. But meditation and spirituality are the two reasons that I do it. And having that belief system, that core belief system that
yeah, definitely
most people have.
Do you believe in fate? Can you do you feel like you're changing fate by doing this? Do you believe in if
destiny? You do a spell correctly, I think that there's a possibility you can change fate, but it's never guaranteed.
Yeah,
because you can't. Fate is stronger than a lot of things in this world. And
fate is also unseen and unknown.
Yeah, exactly.
So you don't know if you actually
actually did, but
But you're casting spells in order to change what you
but
think.
None of these, and now we're getting into the complications of this. A spell may not always work.
Yeah.
When you do a reading with tarot, it may not always be true. It's what you make it. It's just like when you pray to God or when you pray to whoever, like Allah. You think people in mosques who are praying to the West think that whatever they're praying about is absolutely going to come true? No one really knows.
Yeah.
If you've had a specific religious experience with whatever belief system you're practicing, that makes you believe in that religion, then you should be able to believe that you can do something. And that's really where it all stems from for me.
What's your beliefs of the afterlife, or maybe what do Wiccans have an afterlife? Is there reincarnation in general? Maybe what's your personal beliefs then?
There's it's vague with Wiccan with afterlife. There's so many like I said, it's like, you know, and I'm not insulting the religion or anything because I fucking do it.
Yeah.
But it's like, you know, it's such a mixed bag. It's not like a set thing. Like there's no heaven, there's no hell. Like there's no, you know, it's not like you're gonna go here when you die if you're mean. You know, like it's like it's whatever you want it to be. You know, like in, you know, my story that I told you guys earlier with my grandfather, and you know, the story basically is, for all you listeners out there, it's you know, I was by my grandfather's side on his deathbed, and, you know, he grabbed my hand and said, "Are you going to take care of your mother?" And I said, "Yes." And he asked me, "Is she okay?" And I said, "Yeah, she's okay." He's like, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yes." And then he started to lose it, you know, and he flatlined, and we called all the nurses in, and then right before he died, he looked up to the sky and said, "Okay, mom, there you are." And you know, that was a huge moment for me, and, you know, that's where I was like, oh, I believe in the afterlife. You know, there is an afterlife. There is something beyond this plane, spirit plane. And, you know, I don't think that has anything to do with me being Wiccan. I just think it has, you know, I just think that's a separate thing, you know.
Yeah.
And who knows, like, somebody else could believe something different. And maybe I haven't delved into Wicca enough just yet to realize what that is, but that's what I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I you know, going further into that, like, I know that, you know, Wiccans have their own basis of like belief for afterlife and different things. It's just not necessarily what everybody has to believe, you know. Like, you know, is there a certain, now here's a question for you guys. Is there a certain, like, with Christianity, do you have to believe in a certain thing for
Yes.
the afterlife?
Yes,
That it's just
absolutely.
one thing and that's it. Like, there's nothing else.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know? Okay.
Well,
I would say that I would think the vast majority, the consensus would be, yeah, you need Jesus to get into
yeah,
heaven.
the general consensus is that you need to believe that Jesus is the
ABCs
Son of
of
God, and that the actions he took on the cross were redeeming in a eternal, significant
Okay.
type of way.
Yeah.
You don't need to know all the details of it. You don't need to know all the details of Jesus' life.
Yeah.
So this is like a deathbed conversion,
Yeah.
which Christians would say works.
Yeah.
And that's basically like, do you accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior?
Yeah.
If you say yes, that should be enough.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, if you believe it.
yeah. Okay.
Some people would argue, but you also need baptism. Christians tend to take the stance that God is not a psycho, and if somebody converted to Christianity on their deathbed, he wouldn't require a baptism
Yeah.
in addition to that. And so that would suffice. But there are other people who do believe, you know, that baptism is actually a required step in the salvation process. And that's another thing Christians believe, so that salvation is a process. It says to work out your salvation with fear and trembling.
Yeah.
And yeah, fear and trembling, I think a lot of that can be doubt. A lot of it can also just be the awesomeness of, you know, God, to think that any of these prayers that you might have made were actually going to the creator of the universe. It's pretty serious, and, you know, it kind of humbles you if you let it. And so I think the proper Christian posture is to be as humble as possible in that respect. But
Yeah. Yeah. You know, because there's a thing called Summerland in Wicca, which is, you know, what most people think the afterlife is if you're Wiccan. And
What's it called?
Summerland. And it's
Summerland?
yes, like spring, fall, winter,
Summerland.
Summerland. And that's like like their version of the afterlife, but like you don't, you know, I just don't, you know, maybe I'm not steeped in it enough and I haven't been like in it enough, but like I don't, you know, I just would just call it the afterlife. But that's what they call the afterlife. And some people, like some Wiccans think you're, actually I think most Wiccans think that when you're ready to be reincarnated, you'll be reincarnated.
Yeah, this in depth. I don't know how long this is going to take. I don't know how long we're going to be doing this for, but like, saying finding my center and my spirituality and what I believe in. That's what he said. He's like, I don't feel like I need to win at something. I just want to be able to find my center, find my spirituality, and what I believe in. And that's kind of where I'm at. That's kind of what I want to do. I feel like I don't know. I don't really have a center, and I guess center is kind of like an internal, like, when I think of center, I think of like, well, he talks about meditation. So like meditating, you kind of like focus and you kind of get control of your, I guess your emotions and your thoughts and everything. You're able to kind of rein those in and not be controlled by them. And you like center your focus.
What is it about being centered that you don't think you have right now, or what do you take it to mean? I guess, because I guess it would look differently in whatever context you were in. I mean, if you decided to, I don't know, something clicked with Christianity all of a sudden, I think being centered would look like things that you're already pretty familiar with from your background. Perhaps it would just be a change.
Like, what do you mean? Give an example. Like,
the activities of life would mirror activities you're already familiar with regarding like church and Bible studies and stuff. Like if you said Christianity is for me and I should be partaking in all of these things again, that would, I think, be part of you being integrated into your faith and spirituality and how that's practiced in the religion. But if it were something else, it might be different. That's what I'm saying, I guess.
When I say I want to center myself, I don't know, I feel like it's out. Okay, so follow me right now, okay? Like try and follow. Like I feel like right now in life, I don't have a grasp on anything. I feel like I am falling through time like a rag doll, and I'm hitting things because, like, obviously I'm doing this podcast, so like I got certain things under control. I have a job, I'm doing this podcast, I'm doing another podcast, like I'm doing things, but I still feel like I'm just flailing around hoping to find something. I just feel like a center, and this is gonna get like kind of hippy dippy, but like I'm not gonna go into like chakras and everything right now, but the idea that like mind, body, and soul are kind of in unison and harmony. I feel like right now my body and everything is just kind of chaotic, and I'm like helplessly flailing around hoping to hit something that works out, that like realigns me, that like I'm more oriented, if that makes any sense. I don't know, this may be like totally bizarre way of like explaining it, but that's kind of what I'm visually thinking when I'm speaking about centering myself. And the way that he talks about it, like he has a way more stressful job than I do. Like, let's face it, I mean, he's dealing with like a lot of really high pressure situations. I mean, millions, hundreds of thousands of dollars that he's managing for these big time bands and everything. I mean, it's intense. And for him to say that he, it's very important to find his center and everything, and for him to, at least seemingly, I mean, he seems to have everything under control. Or, I mean, he just wears a mask really damn well. But yeah, I don't know, I see that and I'm like, yeah, I want that. But right now, I just feel like I am just flailing, as I said before.
What you're saying sounds to me kind of like contentment and being just kind of like content with the path you're on, finding an actual direction. You talk about wanting course correction, like you're falling and just hoping that something bumps you into the correct trajectory.
Yeah. Or like, at least I'm like, oh yeah, I kind of have control of this situation.
But yeah.
And actually the way that you say it like that, when you present it like that, yeah, maybe spirituality, like, or maybe having religious beliefs is like definitely not a necessity for that. That's like life planning, life coaching kind of stuff.
Well, I feel like contentment is kind of the ideal end result of any number of things that you might do. I mean, whatever you're doing, hopefully you're content doing it. But I think like with this kind of existential
you're talking about spirit and soul and body being all discombobulated and separate from one another in some big way. That seems to me kind of like just, it could be categorized as discontent if you were to give it a name standing alone.
Yeah.
Although it's much more complex underneath the surface.
Yeah.
You'd know that if you were content, these issues would likely be different or have been solved in some way.
Yeah, definitely. Last thing that I want to just touch upon in this small little bit, he said it is what you make it when he's talking about
tarot cards
and like readings. It's I don't know why a little bit of that maybe coming from Christianity where things are kind of more structured to this idea that it's like, hey, it can be like any interpretation that you want it to be. This is what it can mean. It can mean this for you. It can mean that for you. It just seems a little bit too fluid. And to me, in my mind, in order, there needs to be some hard, like, unmoving truth in order for it to be, like,
you want something solid that you can hold on to. I mean, it seems like...
But, yeah.
Like, we're talking about magic, Like, that's kind of what we're talking about when we're talking about, like, tarot cards and stuff and casting spells. It's kind of, but,
I don't know, I feel like there has to... Like, nothing can be a full-on truth if all the elements that comprise that are removable and interchangeable and like able to be interpreted in any way, and any interpretation that you have is okay.
Well, I think the ultimate truth isn't something that's actually expressed in the deck of cards once you lay it out. The ultimate truth is that you laid out those cards and that you had a question in mind when you did so, or perhaps after you did so. And that's the real thing that matters, is that you achieved a question, and that's a spiritual thing, because already, like, if those cards were going to have any purpose, or were going to do anything, it's only because you produced a question that you were taking to it. And so I think that's the unmoving factor, and that's why Liam says that, like, I mean, the ultimate legitimacy of tarot cards is whether or not it applies to the person that cast it. It's never something that can be judged by an external source, and so...
Okay, yeah.
And I guess it might just be like lowering your standard to say that this is all that's required in order for me to appreciate this as entirely authentic, or something true enough that I can actually put my emotional energy toward it and not feel like I'm risking something because it's uncertain whether or not I should be believing this, because if you change anything or if I think anything, it might throw the whole mix. I think the point is, if you can collect yourself to form a question and then spread the cards, good work. And then pick up where Liam, left off with saying, like, sometimes it might not be true.
Yeah.
Whatever it says.
Yeah.
So if you get something that's not
that.
true, but you still went through the process and came up with the question, then I think I think you've still done something good, I guess. I think there's spiritual work to be done simply in inquiry. And even if you don't have an answer, there's benefit from just having asked, or having learned how to ask, I guess.
Yeah. Do you get upset knowing that there's people that do profit off of tarot card readings and psychic stuff and everything? But some of it is probably bullshit. Probably a lot of it is, but...
It's the same way that televangelists profit.
I know, and I don't like televangelists.
And that's that fucking clown Joel Osteen. It's like he profits off, doing, like, whatever the fuck that he does, and it's the same thing. It's like those psychics you see who are like, oh, let me do your tarot reading. It's like they're making a living, and if that's how they want to make a living, then go for it. But I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
I do it for me, and I do it for other people.
Yeah.
I don't
I
charge.
feel like you need to have a really personal connection when you're doing it for other people.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like you need to have that personal connection.
Yeah. Well, and I have also done readings for people I've just met, you know, and some of those readings are the best ones I've done because, you know, I don't know anything about that person, you know, and these cards are attached to me, you know, so when I do the reading, it's like, you know, my spirituality comes out in these cards, and you're being a clairvoyant for somebody else. So this is, you know, for lack of a better word, these don't fuck around.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I want to stress that. Like, this is, you know, you're
yeah.
like,
I don't think. Going into
these don't fuck around.
Is like definitely you don't go into it lightly.
Like,
you shouldn't go into it lightly. You think, oh, we're just gonna have fun
because the experience.
It's like Ouija boarding,
yes,
Ouija boarding, like
I'm
it's
not,
a sport.
well, I'm not gonna say the experience that I had, you know, with where I first realized that this was for me, but I will say that, you know, it was a very startling revelation.
It was very real,
and it was real, and that's in that moment I realized not to mess with this religion, because spiritual power is very strong, and it's something that I now believe in.
And you do a tarot card reading like every day? Is it like daily?
I do one every day.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you feel like that kind of, did you do it in the mornings or kind of like
whenever? It doesn't matter.
Whatever. Okay.
You know, I don't have a set time. I'm not like, oh shit, like I gotta do it.
Do you feel like it would? If you don't do it in the morning, though, does it give you anxiety? Like, if the day is approaching its end and you haven't done a reading for yourself, is there kind of like an itch underneath your skin until you can let that happen?
Yeah, sometimes. You know, the thing is, like, it's not. I usually do it for an outlook. You know, I don't really, because like, I usually do it for like, how is my week going to be? You know, or like, and then I'll think about someone, and then I can read it. I can do it for somebody else too. I'll be like, how is Dennis gonna feel today, or something?
Bad.
And like, I'll pull the card and be like, bad. No. But like, no. I mean, I'll do readings. Do it for themselves, and you know, like most Wiccans who are solitary, they do it for themselves, and like, you know, I love doing it because it's just, you know, it's less of a fortune than it is kind of like a spirituality thing. And I do it right before I meditate. I do it, you know, I don't even have to be meditating. It's just something that I do to keep me centered. You know, and I'll ask it big questions, like really big questions, and I'll ask it really small questions, you know, that are insignificant. And it doesn't really, I don't have like a set schedule of like, well, it's Thursday, I got to ask a big question today. You know, I just kind of, it's just whatever pops into my head.
Certain days have certain questions.
Certain days have certain questions, and you know, it all depends on your emotional state and your spiritual state. And
do you think about it, or do you obsess about it, or do you do neither? Does it just kind of like rest?
So say I do a reading in the morning, right? I wake up and I do a Celtic Cross reading, which is, you know, like pretty much the standard reading. It's complex, so you think about it. Like, I only think about it right after I do it. And then I carry on with my day, and then maybe I'll, like, because I usually leave the spread out at my apartment. Like, I don't like to just do it and then, like, you know, crumple it back up into my deck and throw it in my bag, and, you know, like, I'll leave the spread out and take a picture of it, you know, so I can remember it. And, you know, I do carry these wherever I go, but I always try to leave the spread out for as long as I can. But I generally don't think about it during the day. Like, I just go carry on with my day, and then, you know, like, say I have, like, one time I had a bad day, like a really terrible day, and the cards told me I would have, you know, and then I pull out the picture and I'm like, okay, you know, like, I have death reversed as my outcome card. That was probably why I had the day that I did, you know, or like, you know, like, there are trump cards within the deck. Like, the Fool is the first card, and that's usually the trump card, which is basically like, you know, you could have a whole fortune told for you in the tarot, and if you pull the Fool at the end, then it means that it's going to be a wild card day, and it doesn't, the spirits aren't lined up today in your favor, and like, they can't really, predict what's going to happen. It's very complicated. And,
Yeah, it sounds
I'm
like-
still
But
learning.
a tarot deck is broken if you lose a card.
Yes, absolutely. Like if you were missing a card, you should get a whole new deck entirely. And I've told you this before, I think, but I carry these everywhere I go because this is like, you know how people wear crosses around their neck, like in Christianity, like
Yeah.
they have
The
a crucifix
crucifix, yeah.
everywhere, or like people were, I don't know what is Judaism,
Star of David.
Star of David everywhere. I don't know. This is my crucifix. This is my Star of David. This is like, I carry these around with me because I consider, and this is here, we're going into crazy Wiccan Liam again. I consider these like a person. I have to treat them a certain way. I have to, say hi to them every day, because this is really what.
But that's like the avenue that
Yeah.
you're talking to the spirit. So yeah, it is kind of
Yes,
like a person.
exactly.
It's like the way that they're communicating to you.
Exactly.
So yeah, I would treat it the same way. Yeah.
So,
Makes sense.
and if it is true, if you lose a card, get a new deck. That's.
Yeah, I'm just looking through the spell book again, and I noticed that there are a lot of spells. Actually, all the spells seem to have Bible verses in them, like Bible verses that you're supposed to recite while like performing these spells.
A lot of Wiccans love Jesus, and you wouldn't believe that, but like most people don't believe that. There are a lot of Wiccans that while they don't believe in the conventions of Christianity per se, they believe in Jesus, and they believe if they don't believe in Jesus, they believe in the story of the Bible, and they love Jesus. It's just, that's like a thing. And those Psalms were written, correct me if I'm wrong, but they were written a very long time ago, and those are, sometimes people like to use them as a basis for spells.
They were ancient to the ears of Jesus.
Yes, exactly. So sometimes people like to use those for the basis of spells, but like I said before, most people use the alternate, which for every spell in there, there's usually going to be an alternate, and that's what most people I've heard use. But to be honest, if we're getting a little juvenile here, the Psalms sound cooler. The thing that's not in that book that I wish was, there's no Latin in that book.
Yeah.
Because that is while I use that book for spells, I wish I had a book with Latin in it. Because Latin that's usually what people, that's like the people
that's
cast
to
spells in
associate
Latin.
with.
That's
with
like
the-
spell casting 101.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I wish it was in that book, but it's not. And one day we'll find a book with it in it, and I'll do that.
Yeah.
It's it's an expensive thing to get into, and that's why I'm still learning, because it takes a very long time to really get a solid grasp on it. But for now, not for now, for a while, it's working for me. And some of I think what's keeping me together with this religion is that it's a lot of the readings I've done and a lot of the spells I've casted for people have come true.
Yeah.
Like hauntingly in like their own little ways, not necessarily like so true that it's like, what is happening, but like
It's almost like you can't predict how it's going to come true.
But like some of them, it's
whether you're
some of
explaining it.
some of this stuff, because if you do it, apparently it's said if you do a spell right, you'll know. And I've felt that way, and I've seen it. I've seen the outcome of some of these, and it's scared the shit out of me. And so that's why I feel like I'm obligated to stick with it, because I'm like, I've really never felt anything like it before, and it's interesting.
Okay, so for me, something that I pulled out of this section was the way that he treated his tarot cards, which is like, it makes sense because he's like, speaking with the spirits or his deities or whatever, and they're communicating with him through the tarot card. So he's like, but I feel like it goes beyond just like a reverence for them or respect for them. It becomes like this, like he's like investing himself into it, which, like, I don't know, he was comparing it to like the crucifix and the Star of David, but like, I don't know, I feel like it's not the same. I feel like there's a separation with with wearing the crucifix. That's not something that like,
It's more iconography than it is.
it's more what?
It's more just an icon.
Oh, yeah. Than anything, exactly. And I feel like it's almost like and this is gonna put Wicca back into the realm of just like fantastical, like something that's fantastical, and I don't know. I don't intend to do it like this, but my mind automatically goes to this place when I hear him treating the tarot cards like a person and everything. It makes me think of like something that you have to like cut your hand and like pour your blood into it or something for it to get like to be connected with you or intertwined. I feel like I've seen that in like movies about. I'm thinking about a specific movie that I can't remember. Like I'm thinking of a specific scene from a movie, and the movie I can't remember what it was, but it's like almost like you have to like bleed yourself and have that drip onto this mythical thing in order to like get its powers, so that it can like communicate with you or something, to activate it or something. I kind of feel like that's the thing when kind of like I get that imagery when he's like, hey, I say hi to it, I treat them, I carry them around with me, I don't know, my mind automatically goes to that, which
was, no one ever prefaced a Bible the same way somebody would preface a deck of tarot cards when they're giving it to you. It's not like.
But do you think you could?
Yeah, but I think that everybody has been prefaced enough about everything by like Christianity that if you were to try and like over spiritualize a Bible or hype it up in some way, they've been exposed to Christianity too much that they'd just be like, I know that you're trying to pull some kind of weird trick when you're handing me this Bible, and they would know that you were being abnormal intentionally, I feel like.
You really feel like people would be, it would be an abnormal, or they'd be disingenuous?
Yeah, like if I went up to somebody who was a non-Christian and our age, which is what we should be expecting because Liam was our age, is our age, and said like, this is a Bible and I'm going to give it to you, and this will enable you to communicate with the Almighty God. Treasure it and keep it close. I feel like they would be like, thanks for the Bible, man. Like, I've got one at home. You can have it back. I feel like they would instantly just be like, I know that's not true. Well, I know it's just a Bible because you Christians have been around long enough. And nobody's ever been saying like, you get magical readings out of this Bible. People have been doing that for years with tarot cards.
Yeah, but I really feel like there's a lot of Christians out there, and probably some people listening to this that would say like, yeah, if I gave them, I would say this is the Word of God. This is the God. What is it? God inspired, God breathed. Yeah, God breathed word. Like, this is His actual word. This is like our. This is a guidebook to life. Like, I feel like they would put it on the pedestal as communicating with the Almighty. Now. And I almost feel like...
Realistically, though, like, if I saw a Christian talking to a non-Christian saying, like, this is the guidebook to life, holding up a Bible, I'd be like... I don't know. I get angry at that kind of stuff. Like, if I saw somebody my age being like, this is the guidebook to life, everything you need to know on how to live your life is in here, I'd tell them false, I'd be like, listen, I'm a Christian. I know the book you're holding. I've gone to Bible school.
Yeah.
I know Jesus.
Okay.
But there's more to life than what that book will teach you. Like, I believe the Bible's God inspired or God breathed or whatever, but I still wouldn't, tell somebody this is the guidebook to life. I feel like that's an immature thing to say.
All right.
I'd agree with the Bible when it says that it's useful for teaching and rebuking and all that other jazz in I think Timothy.
Yeah.
But Rob Bell said that there's more that the world requires of you than the Bible provides. Like, the Bible's not going to instruct you how to go to the grocery store and buy your food. I'm depressed and struggling to the grocery store and going to buy food myself right now, and I know that help's never going to come from the Bible.
You're talking about like how to get onto a bus and how to do, like, I feel like there's things that you just...
I know, but they're like... Jews, for example, you can't turn off the lights on the Sabbath.
Yeah.
They really do take interpretation of the law to very serious degrees.
Yeah.
And so, but, we don't follow the same laws, they have. Not all of those laws are in Scripture.
Yeah.
But they deduce those laws from Scripture and tradition.
yeah, I guess I'm not being clear when I say a guidebook to life. Because in my mind, these things, like going to the grocery store, doing this stuff, that's just second. Like, there's no guide. Like, you just do those things in my mind. I'm thinking, when I think guide in life, it's like when you're making decisions, like, you know, like Chick-fil-A decided to run their organization. I mean, I was just reading quotes from their COO. I was trying to refresh my memory about the gay marriage controversy and everything, and he was like, we're going to run our company like the way the Bible says. That's like a easily multi-million dollar, I don't know, billion dollar, but like easily multi-million dollar company that he is like, hey, I'm going to use the Bible for guidance in running my multi-million dollar industry. So like, I don't know. I feel like people do use it.
The skeptic in me sees that as a man using a device as a scapegoat, saying, I'm running my company by this, and like, you can't argue with me because you're actually supposed to be arguing with this, because this is what I'm running my company by.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
So I see that as like a evasive maneuver on the part of somebody who has a lot of money and wants to do things their way and thinks nobody will question me if I say this is what I'm using to do it. He's in the South, dude. He's in Georgia and Fayette County.
So you don't think he's genuine about that? You think he's just hiding behind the Bible?
He could be, but that doesn't change the fact whether or not he's hiding behind the Bible. Like, you can have the Bible in front of you and be taking cover behind it, absolutely rightly so. You can use the Bible to defend your stance on something and be successful in that, but you are ultimately giving your defense over to the Bible and whether or not that actually stands on its own 2 feet.
Yeah. I love the way that this ended. Not only because I was the one that edited it, but the way that it just I felt like ending it on the note that he has seen the outcome of some of these spells, so he feels kind of like obligated to stick with it, because he's like never felt anything like that before. I mean, that's it. That's like everything to me. That's like we can stop.
I'll keep my faith.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I feel like, yeah, we're not going to interview anybody else anymore.
I know, but you're still in this dilemma of.
I am still in the dilemma.
You're a Christian, never had one of those experiences.
I know, exactly. So like that, he is saying I mean, I think I said this previously, but like boom, that's exactly what I'm looking for. That's what I want to have happen. I want to have that.
Be spooked.
Yeah, I want that holy shit moment. Alright, that's going to do it for us for this episode. First order of business, thank you all so much for listening. We both really appreciate it from the bottom of our hearts. If you could just take a second of your time to go and rate us on iTunes or Stitcher or Google Play or wherever you get your podcast, we would be forever grateful, and it would be really helpful for us. Make sure that you follow us on Facebook at the No Faith in Humanity Podcast, and also on YouTube at the No Faith in Humanity Podcast. Make sure to subscribe to us on any platform that you get your podcast so you don't miss anything. Like last episode, there's a lot of things that we want to include that we just did not have the time to include in this episode, so we're going to be releasing it in mini-sodes, and you don't want to miss out on that. Alright, until next time, stay safe and peace be with you.